Hello everybody and welcome to week 4. Here you have your to-do list for the week. We're going to be working on chapter 3, which is sensation and perception. So for the learning objectives there, I had somebody ask me this past week, how should we be using these objectives? Are we supposed to answer these questions? And so again, I just want to tell you that these are here for you to use to guide you in knowing the key points of what you should be looking for when you're reading. So these are great objectives for helping you to study for the tests or the quizzes. You should be able to answer each one of these on your own independently without looking at your notes or your book, to be able to explain each of these concepts. And that way you know if you're having a good understanding of the material. So again, I don't collect these and you don't turn these in, but I would, even print them out and maybe put space in between each one, and then just write out your answers and use it sort of as a study guide. So in this chapter, we're going to be looking at both sensation and perception. The first half of the book is sensation, or half of the chapter, I should say, is sensation, and the second half is about perception. So sensation is all of your senses, right? So understanding what those senses are, how we receive and process sensory information. So what kind of information makes it in? We attend to certain things in our environment and not to others. How do we go about gathering that sensory information? So we're going to learn about all the key sensory receptors. So light and the eye, looking at things like color and color blindness, as well as sound and how it travels through the ear. You're going to be responsible for understanding the various parts of the ear and how those function, and as well as learning sound, pitch, and how we process that. Also, people who are unable to hear, ways that we can improve their hearing by manipulating some of those functions and mechanics of the ear. We'll take a look at taste and smell, as well as the senses of touch, pressure, temperature, and pain, a little bit on those. And then there's where we sort of make a shift from talking about sensation and then into perception, like perceiving our world. Perception is more subjective. The things that we watch and pay attention to aren't necessarily the same for everyone. So we'll look at common perceptual experiences, like how people view and understand their world in ways that are similar, but then we'll also look at ways that we can be tricked into seeing something that isn't really there. So what's a really fun part of this chapter is the visual illusions we talk about, as well as understanding depth and depth perception, using monocular and binocular cues. Mostly all of the things that we do and we kind of take for granted, just that how we see our world, and how we understand our world. And it's kind of cool to break it down that these things actually have processes embedded within them. So that is the chapter. There's a lot of terminology in the chapter, just identifying parts. So one thing that the book is really good at as you work your way through chapter 3 in the e-text, there's videos that you can stop and watch throughout the reading. Most of them are very short, like 1 minute, 2 minutes. Please do that, because as you're working your way through the material, it's going to stop and it's going to show you the eye. And it's going to show you how light travels through the eye, through a 3D or 2D image of the eye. These are great illustrations and simulations that the book has. So definitely take a look at those. Don't just, read the text and skip those videos, because those will really help kind of tie it all together and help it to make sense. I've posted your lecture slides. So again, be using those slides compared to what you're reading in the book. And then you have your discussion, and I put the cite as you write instructions right along with the discussion, just because I noticed in the discussion posts, people are still not always consistently citing where their ideas are coming from and or not citing correctly. So just check out this one-page document that tells you how to cite the information that you're using in your responses. This week's reading will be based on the chapter 3, as well as Hawk Reading 2.1, which is called Take a Long Look. This is reading that deals with what infants prefer to look at, so preferential looking behavior in infants, explaining why the human face is preferable to any other object for infants, and do so using the evolutionary perspective. And then kind of thinking outside the box a little bit now in terms of what research questions a developmental psychologist might ask today about infant perception. So what has already been asked, you're going to learn a lot from the readings about what kinds of research questions people have explored when it comes to infant perception, like how do infants see color? When do they see color? How old are they when they first understand sounds, and how do they make sounds, and anything with perception, sight, sound, touch, taste, any of that is fair game. And so think about some questions that still need to be explored, and I want you to come up with a study design that is either experimental or correlational. So hint, hint, you may need to go back to chapter 1 to understand what an experimental study would entail or what a correlational study would entail. And I want you to design one or the other based on a current research question that you came up with in number 2. So take that question and from a developmental psychology sort of perspective, put it into a research design of how would I go about answering that question. Okay, so that's the basis for your discussion. There's going to be a lot of variation this week in what your responses are, so I'm hoping for some really good dialogue in your discussion posts. This is really a chance to read what somebody else writes and just kind of run with it. Put your own spin on it, ask questions, give more examples or any examples of things that you're reading about that other people are posting. Those are all good ways to be extending the dialogue. I just want to remind everyone that you do need your original post where you are answering these questions, and then you need to be responding to 3 other people's posts. There was a handful of people the prior week who did not respond to anyone's questions, and so that significantly brings down your grade on these discussion posts. So you don't want to be doing that. You want to be, really taking your time to respond back to 3 people. And your response should go beyond just, oh, that was a really good point, or I liked what you said. You really want these to be well thought out responses to what people have said, okay? Looking for any opportunity you can to integrate in examples and material from the readings. So that's how the discussion will go. You have a quiz this week on chapter 3. And then I also put a couple videos here. I think these are awesome. I really love these. Sometimes I show them in my in-person class. Sometimes I don't. It depends on time. But they're the crash course videos on the topic of sensation and perception. And then this one here, Perceiving is Believing, deals with like visual illusions in particular and how the brain processes things that it doesn't understand or things that don't make sense perceptually. And so these are really cool videos, and they have a ton of information in them that mimics what's in your book and what you're reading about, and it does it in a really fun way. And I think they're very easy to understand. They just make it a little different. So if you can watch these, they're really a good overview of the material. You should watch those after you've already done all the reading. I think that will really help. So that wraps up the week. Please let me know if you have any questions this week about the material, anything not covered, or about your discussion posts. I'd be happy to answer your questions. Have a good week, everybody.